Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Ernie C, the Gap 2 Genius, and on the special edition of the 85th episode here at the STS Podcast, I got Paul Hernandez, Coach Paul, 661 Hoops in the building. Paul, what's up, bro?
What's good, my man? How you doing tonight, E?
Man, good, bro. Just grinded, my guy. I'm really happy we got this going. I know it's been what was it that we've been kind of busy, but it was real easy to schedule with you, bro. Appreciate you coming on, man.
No doubt, man. I appreciate you guys having me on here, and I definitely appreciate the platform for sure.
I really was looking forward to seeing you last week, man. I knew that was supposed to be our first game of the season. You're always looking forward to seeing some familiar faces, and didn't happen. But I hope you guys have a healthy season this year. I know you're coaching at Ridgeview, right?
Correct. Yeah, I'm the assistant coach under Mike Martin. You know, Mike's been there for a while now on the girls and the boys side. So, yeah, it's been a crazy season. It really has. I don't know if you want to jump into that first, or if you kind of want to.
We know what, Paul. Let's just get your history, my guy. How did you start coaching basketball and just finding your love for the game?
Yeah. So, grew up just diehard fan of basketball. Always have loved the game. Played when I was younger in high school, and then I just wasn't the ideal high school student. Didn't really pan out for me in a variety of areas in high school. So once I got out of high school, again stayed close to the game. I was always playing and stuff. And then when I really kind of got into coaching was when my son started playing basketball. Probably like through BUA. I want to say the first time I think I coached anything was through BUA back in the day with the Shilohs, when they were doing it at that little small complex off of District Boulevard. It was like that small little indoor gym. So I just kind of picked it up. And again, initially it was one of those things where, my son wanted to play, good avenue for us to work together. And then I coached him at Laurel Glen Elementary. And then I moved, kind of progressed with him when he went to Tevis Junior High, his 7th grade year. The Panama Buena Vista schools, they only have like one team, not a 7th and an 8th grade. And so I was really fortunate. I inherited a team that had probably one of the best junior high teams, middle school teams ever in this area. You had Kadar Waller, you had Lawrence Giroux, you had Taj Wright, that was, a really good football player and basketball player. Daniel Viveros was on that team too. Really solid squad. I don't think they lost a game. And so the following year, all those guys graduated out. Lawrence Giroux was still there. They had a really good 8th grade group. And then, we had some pretty solid 7th graders, including my son. And from there, it kind of kept growing and taking off. And I'd already started coaching club ball at that point too. I was coaching with Marco with Team Havoc.
Okay.
And then by seventh grade, I kind of switched over to Cal Bombers with Mark Heiser. And from there, it kind of just, again, it continued to grow. A lot of those kids that played on that 8th grade team at Tevis, we lost like 3 games that year, with like 36-3 or something crazy like that. Lost in the county championship game, but was really able to kind of take that group, add a few pieces from around Bakersfield, and really just kind of progressed that way with AAU ball. I had a really solid squad. I ended up coaching with the Bombers and also with Third World with Jesse Soto for a couple years. And so about 7-8 years total, as far as coaching club ball and school ball. Still coaching at Ridgeview, as helping out there as well as an assistant. Not really doing much with AAU ball anymore, and a lot of that has to do with kind of the transitioning of things, moving more into scouting and stuff like that. But that's really what it's been with basketball. When I started coaching, it was more just to kind of get into it with my son and be there with him, and then it kind of took on a life of its own where I wasn't even really coaching him anymore. I had my own team that I was coaching, and then he had another team he would play on. So that kind of helped, I think, more with really kind of trying to solidify the coaching spot and really learn the game from a coaching perspective and not being tied directly to my kid. I think it helped me grow a lot because I didn't have that kind of in my back of my head at all times. You know what I mean?
Which could be challenging. I'm sure too. Coaching your son. I know you want to have him where you think he needs to be at. So I guess that would be a challenge to kind of separate the two. How is it, with this season at Ridgeview? How is that transition going so far?
Just as far as the season in general.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's been tough. I mean, we started off the opening weeks were about, I think, 3 weeks ago now, on the 28th. So we had our first 2 games against Independence. We're lacking a lot of size at Ridgeview right now. It's just, it's definitely not the teams that they had with the McCalls and the Roberts and, the Martins and those guys. So it's a different look. It's very guard heavy. We don't have a whole lot of size in town in general. I know if you look around, you look what teams had just 2 years ago in 2019 compared to now, totally different dilemma. We just have no size. And so it's, we're definitely the team that lacks a lot of size. So we're very guard heavy. We played Independence really tough. I'll be honest, I was a little shocked how well we played them. We lost by, I want to say 11 and 14, I think. But you're talking about the returning, defending Valley champions, Division II Valley champions, roster that's pretty loaded with Cam Brown, Tyron Tyler, Levi Latu is there now, who was at BCHS before. Michael Pineda's over there. He was at GSA last year. So they got a good little squad. And for us to hang pretty well. And then last week we had our games canceled. We were supposed to play Highland, so we had those canceled. And then tonight it just showed, Golden Valley's been playing a lot of games. Coach Herds had them, being smart about it. Games get canceled, pick up some other games. And so I think they played 6 games.
Wow.
And so we played them tonight, and we had just a bad second quarter. It got ugly quick, and they got size. Golden Valley does. Herds got some size over there. Markel Brooks is 6'6". Kambani Jackson's like 6'4". Jermaine Dabbs, their main player is about 6'2", 6'3". So they have a lot of size and length, and that it wore us down really quickly. We had a good second half. It was just the first half was so bad it didn't matter at that point. You know what I mean?
That's in the hole. Definitely.
Yeah. So I think what you're seeing right now is there's just so much. We've had too much practice time and not enough game time. So everything that's worked in practice, well, if we don't have size and we're playing a team like Golden Valley with a ton of size, there's no way we can prepare for that in practice. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, yeah, missing the game reps last week definitely took its toll tonight. So we were supposed to play, again, fingers crossed, you know what I mean? But we're set to play Liberty the next 2 nights, at home tomorrow, and then over at the Patriots house on Thursday.
Beautiful. How's it been the challenge as far as keeping your guys locked in with such a compressed season, a shortened season?
Yeah, I think, there's just a lot of angst. I think with the seniors, especially my son being a senior, a couple other seniors on the team, I think it really depends on what they were doing outside of school ball. I think kids that have been playing, there's been a lot of kids playing for the last year. Basketball didn't stop, whether it was here in Kern County, you know what I'm saying? There was stuff going on at GSA. There's a lot of hoops going on in Arizona, Utah, surrounding states type of stuff. So some kids that have been playing, I feel like they're not as rushed for stuff. But I think a lot of kids that, I think with high school basketball in Kern County, you have a lot of kids on teams that, they don't maybe have the resources or they just aren't tapped into that. So they're real just school ball players, you know what I mean? And so I think for them, it's just the uncertainty. I think the kids get frustrated. Oh, we got to go do our COVID tests again. We got to do it again. And the frustration, I think, for some of them is a lot of the other sports that are going on right now that are outdoor sports, they don't have to test.
Exactly.
And so they're like, it's not fair. But I'm like, you have to understand the only reason you were given a season is but as athletic departments across districts throughout the state had to agree to basically meeting the requirements that the college and the professionals have been doing. And that's the only reason we were even able to argue to have a season.
Yes.
So it's like once they agreed to it, the state agreed to saying, okay, cool, we'll let you have seasons, but you have to follow these guidelines. It was kind of like a matter of, okay, well, there's no way that all these kids are going to clear. So I think just the rigor of it. But I'll tell you this much, man, from the perspective of just Ridgeview, players have been pretty positive. You know what I'm saying? They've kept a good spirit. Tonight was a tough loss. I think they came in thinking that we'll get this one. We hung tough against Independence. So this team, theoretically isn't as good. And so I think, I think where it's hurting them the most is when games miss and then you're filling it with practice time. At some point, does it just feel like, are we just practicing out here? You know what I mean? So I think that's been the hard part. And then also, not having the classroom dilemma that's hit students this year, and so the student athletes that are playing basketball, there was no requirement with regards to GPAs this year because it's just too hard to do, And so we've got kids playing that I think are struggling in the classroom as well. And not just, I mean, I know that's going on at other, other schools and other areas, whether Bakersfield or not, and so I think there's just, but I do feel that a lot of kids are appreciating it just because they've been cooped up for a year. You know what I mean? So just being out and about, being in the school gym, I think all those things are good. They've handled it well. I've been pleased. I think tonight was the first time we had a little bit of tension. You know what I mean?
Well, adversity never hurts, so I think.
No, not at all.
I think we definitely need a little adversity. I know with us at Highland, just from a Highland perspective, it was great until we got knocked. And it's like, man, all this time that, they're not just the coaches, but for the players, they're giving us everything we asked them to do. And we thought, Ridgeview would be a good little see where we're at. Cause we, in practice, we really can't see where we're at. We could run stuff and do what we got to do, but how are we going to react when we're down by 10? How are we going to react when we're up by 10? What works? What rotations are we going to go with? Like things like that are still unanswered on our end. And that that's where it's kind of, we get a little anxious. And yeah, you're right. Are we just going to practice? Are we just practice? When are we going to get into the game?
Yeah.
And I think
so. Wow, you guys are what, cleared next week?
Yes, but I think when we get back, I think we may have one against North, and we only have 2 more after that. So total 3 games, and it's it's kind of discouraging, especially for our seniors who are looking forward to at least making a mark the last 6 games. Kind of go out the way they want to go out. So it's interesting, man. I think it's gonna be one of those things. We're gonna see how tough we are, how mentally tough we're gonna be in the next few weeks. Paul, real fast, just before we go into your scouting, man, I wanted to kind of talk to you as an assistant coach. What would you say would be, something like every assistant coach, the qualities that we need to continue to be where our head coach needs to be at, our attributes, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man, it's been hard for me. You know what I mean? And I've talked to Mike a little bit about this, and Eric, especially. Eric's, the JV coach and also the assistant varsity coach as well. And this has been the first time I've ever been an assistant coach. You know what I mean? And so for me, it's really been hard to kind of figure a role. And I think the reason it's been hard is at the same time, over the last kind of year and a half, 2 years, I've really wanted to kind of kick this scouting service, at least the foundations of it off. And so there's been some conflicting for me as an assistant coach, I'll be honest. And it's made me realize, like, okay, I've got to pick and choose at some point. Because it is distracting. You know what I mean? It's hard for me to be a good assistant. I think you really have to understand what the head coach needs from you. Yes. You know what I mean? There's the head voice, and then as an assistant coach, you have certain jobs. And I think for me, what the hardest part has been is adapting to those qualities that are necessary, because I still see the game through the lens of a head coach, and also as someone who just watches a lot of basketball and scouts a lot of basketball. So I see things. And again, it's not that I think it's be done, right or wrong necessarily. It's just that, like, I have a 2 cents that I want to throw in. So it's knowing when to pick and choose those times to voice yourself as an assistant coach. And I think really kind of getting to know the players and where they fit in the scheme of things. I think helping with rotations and substitutions is huge as an assistant coach. And again, that's the time you get to spend with those players, get to figure out, if you got your starting 5, who are going to be your first 2 to go in? And those 2 need to be able to complement the 3 that are remaining on the court. You know what I mean? And then you chop the subs up from there. So I think that's been something I as a head coach, again, especially with AAU ball, a lot of the time coaching by yourself. You know what I mean? You got a roster of 8 or 9 dudes. They can all go. It's really like I'm trying to mix match dudes here and there. So I think for me as an assistant coach, it's one, being an extension of the head coach, but also having not necessarily the same exact vision as the head coach. You know what I mean? I think a staff can be better off if all the assistant coaches aren't just yes men. You know what I mean? Yes. But also kind of knowing when it's picking and choosing the right times. So those discussions on when you may see something different happen away from the players. You know what I'm saying? You never want to give the players the sense that there's a division within the coaching decision making, because that gives them an easy out to start bickering, chipping away, arguing about playing time, arguing about who should be on, because they hear the coaches doing it. So I think as an assistant coach also, it's really important to just make sure when the eyes are on you, push come to shove, I'm backing the head coach. It's his call. It's his decision. Whether or not I ultimately agree with it doesn't even matter. You know what I'm saying? Because that really, in my opinion, models well for players what the real world's like. You know what I mean? You're going to have a boss, you're going to have a manager below the boss, and then you're going to be below them, and then the players are at the bottom. I feel like the assistant coaches are kind of like the managers, you know what I mean? And then the head coach is the CEO of the organization, of the team. And I think if it falls into those categories and everyone kind of understands and adapt their roles, but I think at the end of the day, communication is the ultimate thing that allows all that to flourish or not flourish.
No, I understand her. I think that was a blessing about football the last 5 years. We're really open, really had a lot of communication. And now that this is my first year helping with varsity, it's like, okay, now I'm still trying to figure out my role. Like you said, first year guys trying to figure out role. It's a vital thing for us, at least mentally for me. I'm like, I'm not overstepping boundaries. I don't want to step on anybody's feet. I want to learn from them. And it's like you said, an extension of a voice. I always said we're the echo of the head coach. I always like to play kind of like the other side of the fence. Like, this is what he means. This is what you do well, but this is how you get better. So it's always it's that constant battle of how do I fit in this, what's already established too, because shout out to Scott Smith and all the guys. They've been there for a while now, helping, I feel like 3 years now. So how do I fit in this puzzle? So it's been really interesting, but a lot, learning from Damo and Wes and just everybody I've come across, including yourself, just learning little things like, okay, maybe this could help us out right now. Let me pull this out my bag, So
well, and I think too, you hit a good point. Like coming into the Ridgeview system, you've got someone like Mike Martin, who's won Valley championships on the girls' side. Coach Erica McCall, you know what I'm saying, arguably the best player to ever come out of Bakersfield. And then on the guys' side with the team, like with, he's the last person to have a team that I can recall in this area where you had 3 Division I guys on the roster. You had McCall, you had Roberts, and then LJ, you know what I mean? LaFell Zegler. It's like, dude, like that's so to come in and try to like be assertive with anything would almost be ignorant, you know what I mean? Because it's real easy for the head coach to just point up in the rafters and be like, banners, bro, what you hanging? You know what I mean? So
exactly
was I think it was a good transition, and I'm glad it was with a coach that had accomplished things, because again, for me, the toughest part has been learning how to just roll with the flow of things. And I've what I've really found lately is like I just do the book. You know what I mean? Like, give me the book, let me do the book. That way I stay focused on that. And then I don't start over analyzing things in my head while the game's going on. You know what I mean?
It's so hard, dude, not to over analyze things again. That's why I'm kind of dreading, like, how am I going to feel during this game? Because I know what I was taught to do, but I'm like, okay, a whole new role now. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? So I'm constantly asking Scott, too, what do you need me to do? Even game day, I think we found out like 5 hours before tip-off, bro. All day I'm screaming at school, game day, happy as hell, asking Scott, hey, what are we doing? What roles do you need me to do? And next thing you know, just the plug gets pulled. I was like, man, that was so damn. I can't imagine the kids felt. So
I think that's a key thing too. Like as far as an assistant coach is really kind of not coddling the players, but kind of providing that because I remember getting the phone call from our AD, and as soon as I saw it on my phone, I was like, I don't even want to answer this. You know what I mean? Like I don't even want to answer. But at the same time, it was like, okay, take it in. Called my kid, told him, and then it went in the group chat to all the players and stuff. They're bumming this and that. I'm like, look, man, like we already knew that any game we get this year is a game you weren't even going to have originally. Like, because again, you know how it was 2 months ago. None of us thought this was even going to be a season.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? Like I didn't expect to have students back in my classroom this year. You know what I mean? So in a matter of a month, the whole game switched up, and it's like, okay. But I think it's a good way also to kind of illustrate and highlight gratitude to players. Like, look, man, this was not given to you. Like, we haven't been able to get in this facility all year, and the expectation was we won't. And the fact that we are, we just have to be appreciative of those games, because end of the day, it's a game. You know what I mean? And like there's bigger life stuff out there that a lot of people are dealing with. So trying to keep that perspective, but it's hard. You know what I mean?
So hard.
In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I'm lying to these kids. I'm thinking, I just want to play.
Yeah, dude, that's my biggest issue right now. It's like, especially we coming to the last 4 years at the Hill, we playing to win. Every practice, everything matters. We're doing something that applies to the game. And now it's like, oh, we're just happy to be out here to play. It's a privilege, which it is, but I'm so used to that. It's like that warrior mentality. I want to win. Let's do what we have to do. And if you're not with it, then you can just sit on the 12th man and we'll see you at practice. Be a good practice player. Like stuff like that. It's not, and that's cool. I had to humble myself sometimes too. It is just the game. Even with AJ last week coming on,
Yeah, that's right.
It was, just the bigger things and bigger than basketball sometimes, which we know that too when we're doing, we're leaders of young men, but at the end of the day, why are we in here? We're here to win, and it's really challenging. You're right, Paul. It's challenging, man. Real fast before we get into your scouting, I just want to, again, thank you coming on, bro. I know right now basketball is what every sport's on right now, but I just want to put the spotlight just on Ridgeview ball, yourself. That's kind of why I wanted to put this platform. The podcasting thing's fun, but coaching is where my heart's at too, man. So to have you come on, it's been really, it's an honor, my guy.
I appreciate that. I want to be on as well.
With the 661 Hoops, this is a scouting service, right?
Correct.
I want you to kind of put my viewers and I in the game, because I'm not, I love to coach high school ball, but I'm a little bit outside of the, you're traveling places, you keep me kind of in tune what's going on, because I'm not really out there like that. Can you kind of explain how you got the inspiration to start this scouting service?
Yeah. So it's right now it's, I say scouting / media, you know what I'm saying, service. There's nothing official as far as we haven't gotten licensed as a with the scouting service officially yet. That's kind of in the pipeline for building some ground-based stuff first, So really how everything started was through coaching AAU ball, you know what I'm saying? Coaching club ball. Again, I was fortunate. The last year that I coached was 2019. So kind of the last year where there was really big AAU ball before everything kind of went into the high school season, and definitely before COVID, but we never got around to the 2020 AAU season. You know what I mean? So, but I had some really good teams back to back. I coached a team. I was coaching with Third World with Jesse Soto, and it was my first year with him. And I had a team that was it was a 16U squad, man, and they were fun. It was a ton of talent. Elijah Carter was on that team. Lyndall Henderson Jr. played with me for the summer part of the AAU season. Samson Ackerman from BC, or they graduated at BHS last year. So quite a few of the 2020 grads, matter of fact. So guys that just graduated last year. And we just had a really solid team. We had size, we had guard play, we had shooters. And that team accomplished a lot of success. And I think they went like 36-6 that year, won like 5 or 6 tournaments. We competed well in really big tournaments. It was the last year they did Fab 48. And so after that season, I was taking groups to different camps, whether it was senior showcase stuff or whether it was individual player camps. I took a few of them to like one of the Pangos All West camps, Pango Senior Diamond in the Rough Showcase, the West Coast Elite into summer camp. And so those dudes were generating buzz because people were like, who, specifically Elijah Carter, people were like, who is this 6'5" guard from Bakersfield that no one even knows about? You know what I'm saying? How is this kid not noticed? You know what I mean? And so that kind of, we were going to tournaments. I was going to events. I was kind of just doing live streaming video, just live streaming games on my phone, just as a way to kind of hype stuff media wise. I was watching, I was able to watch a lot of high level AAU basketball with quality players, live streaming it. But when I started taking players to events and was posting about it, I was at an event. So this would have been it would have been like March of 2019. It was the year when Isaiah Hill and Kadar Waller and that whole group, Elijah Carter, they were seniors. Well, there was like 3 senior events that I went to, was taking players to Beach City Hoops. AC from Beach City Hoops put one on. Took some players to that one, like a team of 8 dudes. And, they did really well, generated a lot of hype at that event. And then he also had an all-star game, and Kadar and Isaiah Hill were playing in that all-star game. It was in Long Beach. And so I was talking to Arlena Waller, Kadar and Bentley's mom. And she's like, man, you're always out at these events. And I've known Arlena and Doc for a long time. Doc used to train my son when he was growing up or coming up as a middle school player. And so she's like, look, you're doing a lot of stuff, but you don't have like a real brand behind what you're doing. You know what I mean? So not that, and at the time I'm like, I don't really care about that stuff. You know what I mean? And I still, it's not necessarily about the brand, but it's like, she made a really good point. Like, you need some sort of a logo so people know where to direct if they need to contact you about something, right? Basically, all this work kind of goes to waste if there's not something behind it that people can reference. So she actually shot the logo to me one day out of nowhere, just kind of like, hey, put this together. It's yours to have. Do what you want with it. So a major shout out to the Waller family in general for how much.
I think you was right, essentially, right? I think that was correct game right there. I think that the branding does matter 100%, bro.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
You're great at what you do, Paul. And I think once we affiliate you with your logo, that's how I look at it. Like if I
Yeah.
see 661 Hoops Live, it's legit. You know what I mean? Like I'm all
And
for
so
it.
I was really fortunate. So I just started going down to events, right? I was like, okay, look, I'm really enjoying covering the game. I've been coaching it. And it wasn't that I didn't have any passion for coaching anymore as far as AAU ball. It was one of those things where like the team that I had was phasing out. They were done with the AAU circuit. They were graduating high school. I didn't have an up and coming team. So I just started going randomly to some of the bigger events, specifically like the Pangos events, the West Coast Elite events, and a lot of the scouts and writers like Arani Flores from Cal High Sports, Devin Uglin from Prep Hoops, guys like that in the SoCal area. And then Jerry Freitas from up north, Frank Burleson, Dino Straganis from Pangos. Like I kind of was just going to all their events and kind of intermixing with a lot of those guys. And they kind of noticed, man, you're here all the time, but also trying to plug some of the Central Cali guys at these events. You know what I mean? So from there, it kind of led to conversations with some of the top scouts in the southern section and the northern section, but specifically the southern section. And they were kind of like, look, bro, like there's nobody covering hoops in your area.
Facts.
You know what I mean? Like there's local guys, don't get me wrong. And there's people that do a great job. You know what I'm saying? Clovis Sports Report, Paul Meter, and them, they do a really good job. Pag Meter with what he does covering sports in central section. Don't get me wrong, there's people covering it. But someone just focusing only on basketball and really kind of figuring out who these players are. So it kind of started from that, you know what I mean? Kind of getting an idea of, okay, there's known talent in this area, or there's people that know there's talent, but nobody's driving 2.5 hours from SoCal to come watch Independence play BCHS. They're just not going to do it.
Yeah, facts.
To see one or two kids, you know what I'm saying? And so that kind of led us along. And then at the same time, you know, Damo and Irv and them started Clutch. So they were doing a lot with videography. We were both at a lot of similar events, you know what I mean? And so in the last year or so, it really just came down to, this is what I enjoy doing. I enjoy watching the game. I enjoy analyzing the game, really try to take kind of the stuff I've learned from some of the people that have been in this thing for 25 years as a groundwork of like, what should I do? I'm constantly trying to reference them for feedback on stuff, but also really trying to provide a platform for kids in this area. And Ronnie Flores gave me some really good advice. He was like, look, man, stick to your area. There's tons of dudes in SoCal covering all these kids. There's tons of kids and guys in NorCal covering those kids. Like if you end up relocating to one of these areas, you're just going to be another one of those dudes.
Yes.
Or you can have a bigger platform in your area, and also it benefits them because then you have someone pumping information out to them. And I've, been fortunate, it's always hard for me to talk about this kind of stuff because I don't want to come off as braggadocious, but I've been fortunate in certain areas where I've seen it kind of play itself out, where kids have gone to camps or events, and if I'm not able to be there to plug their name, shoot guys that I know are going to be there that are scouts that are going to be doing the, picking the selection for the all-star games at these events. Hey, there's this and this kid. Now the kid's got to show out, but their names are getting out there. You know what I mean? And so it's been really fun, man. Like I think we really ran with it over the COVID, the pandemic. Damo and I were really trying to put on those the Central Cali Prospect Open runs that generated even more. We had kids coming from like NorCal, kids coming from SoCal, Central Coast, a lot of local kids, Fresno area kids. And again, it's just kind of continuing to keep building. And so we kind of decided, again, Damo and I talk a lot about this. We go a lot to the Fresno area for games and stuff. And what I've tried to do with this high school season is, the Fresno teams, they've been going for about 2 or 3 weeks longer than we have. So I've just been trying to get up there, cover as many games. I put out like a rankings last week about top 10. West Coast Elite, they started a central program branch. So I'm working with them as well. And I use their platform, Silver Wave Media, to kind of publish my write-ups or my evaluations. And, I've just seen the platform has there's a necessity for the platform for these players. You know what I mean? We've seen, the way I look at it, if I look deep in like internally to like what really drives me is coaching a kid like Elijah Carter and seeing how talented he was and knowing that he left his senior year with no offers. You know what I'm saying? And like, we have to do better as a basketball community. You know what I'm saying? And We've got a lot of people that know the game. We've got a lot of people in the central section that have connections with collegiate coaches, with scouts, with recruiters. And at some point, we have to do our job to get these kids a better platform, especially during the high school season. You know what I mean? Because that's the time when, again, the LA kids that are playing, not necessarily LA, but the SoCal kids playing at the big schools, they're getting coverage year round because then they go play AAU ball with shoe company teams. So they're getting constant year round coverage, where our kids at best usually get AAU coverage. And then the top guys will get some love, but that's it.
That's
Outside of the, in the recent years, outside of your Jalen Greens, your Isaiah Hills, you know what I'm saying? Outside of those top tier dudes, there's a lot of guys flying under the radar that, if we can continue to expand that for them, and then at some point eventually, solidifying the scouting service and actually putting a scouting report together and being able to provide that to colleges is the ultimate goal.
Definitely, bro. I think the exposure you're giving to these kids, you're right. I never would have had half these kids if it wasn't for 661 Hoops. That's a necessity that we're lacking. Like you said, it's not because no one wants to. It's people who were doing it. They moved on. They got different gigs. They got different positions. And it's kind of like that void that you're feeling, Paul. I think that's a void that you are filling, and it's been really, really been well done.
I appreciate that, man.
But you're scouting, but what do you look for exactly? What are you looking for a player, man? What's your ideal player that this guy is the one I could put this on my page, or I can give him the love he deserves?
Yeah. So again, a lot of it too is it was tough. You know what I mean? Like, okay, if I'm going to do this, there has to be some credibility behind it. So again, early on, I tried to spend a lot of time with some of the bigger scouts, which wasn't really necessarily me going to scout players as much as like almost me going to scout the scouts and kind of get a real feel for how to do this. Because again, it's like, you've been watching the game long enough. You kind of know things to look for. You've been coaching the game, 7-8 years. And it's like, you put a lot of time and effort into that. But scouting, it's more of a, kind of pull back perspective. You know what I'm saying? Because you're not necessarily in the trenches of the wins and losses. So you can take a step back. It's a lot less pressure, you know what I mean? Because you're not having to focus on that thing. So the things that, again, depending on positions, you know what I'm saying? If it's a guard, specifically point guard, it's depending on where kids want to slot themselves, it's what do the handles look like? What does the court vision look like? You know what I mean? What is their playmaking ability? Are they able to break dudes down off the dribble, quick first step, little things like that. And so there's been a few kids in the last years where there's been some, this kid's this level or this kid's that level. And, looking at some of these players, kind of breaking their games down, I've listed them as, maybe a D2 prospect and kind of gotten some kickback on it. Like, nah, dude's a D1 guy. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't know. At his height, I don't know if he's a D1 guy. You know what I mean? And so then checking that with other guys like a Jerry Freitas in NorCal, who's again national scout, been doing this 25 years, and getting the same feedback from him. Yeah, he's a D2 guy. Okay, cool. You know what I mean? Now I know I'm on kind of the right path. So that's kind of where, like, as far as, I guess, checking to make sure I'm on my P's and Q's and doing things that are going to have credibility. That's where it kind of started as far as getting that foundation. But again, any game I'm going to, man, I'm really looking for where, what stands out. So the hustle plays always are going to stand out. You know what I'm saying? The kid's body language is always going to stand out. You know what I mean? If you could hoop, bro, it's going to show itself. You know what I mean? Like, if you are a 3-point shooter, all you have to do is watch Cole Anderson play for a half. You know what I'm saying? 2 quarters, and you can go, that boy is a shooter.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? He's a knockdown 3-point shooter. But there's a lot of dudes that can shoot threes, and then when they're going, they're hype. But when they're not going, their body language shows it.
Down.
Yeah. No defense, finger pointing. So a lot of what I really have been, focusing on outside of, again, the skill set, right, is body language. How do they respond to coaches when they're being critiqued?
Mm-hmm.
How are they when they get subbed out of a game? You know what I mean? Like, what are they looking at? Are they are they hustling off the court when they do get subbed out? Now, what kind of a bench player are you? Are you still part of the team, or now are you owning your own mind?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So there's a lot of, I think, I guess intangibles would be the best way to say it. You know what I mean? Because again, the tangibles of the skill set on the court are going to show. It's those little things like, kids that motors are like this, up and down, up and down. One game they're dropping 25, the next game they're dropping 7. Like, you should be dropping 25 a game, you know what I mean? Or 7 a game, or somewhere in the middle. There shouldn't be that much of a variance, but a lot of it is, again, that motor. And I think what our area struggles from, and I'm saying our area in the whole central section, is lack of, because we're not in the Central Valley or the southern section, and we're not in the northern section. So we kind of compare ourselves against other areas, you know what I mean? So Bakersfield compares themselves against Fresno, against the Central Coast, and all the little areas in between, right? So I think kids get a false understanding too, you know, of where they fit at. And I think that conversation sometimes is fun to have with players about where they really are as a prospect. But I think if I could add something, or if, you know, I don't say me, but I'm saying me with regards to those of us in the basketball community, if we can start adding like a level of education to all this, to get players a better understanding and to get them to be more knowledgeable about where you really fit as a next level prospect, is a huge missing component. And it's not just our area. There's kids all over the country that think they're D1 or not.
Of course. I think that's something that we really need to, especially to our listeners not really familiar with what basketball entails. Or there's a chance to get a higher education playing this game.
Yep.
And what you're doing is providing that platform to probably get them some eyes. And I tell my guys, this doesn't matter if it's a NAIA, D3, D2, JC, a D1, mid D1, whatever you're blessed to get, be happy with that. Of course, you want more, but I think any free education, and I think we don't got to go with the stats, but becoming an NBA player, becoming a D1 player, the odds are not the highest, but to get a free education, do that. And it's really cool to see that you're helping our players. I think it's what the motivation is, to get these kids to get opportunities to play at the next level.
Well, and that's I think the thing too, you know, it's crazy when kids, when I talk to players, and I'm like, listen, man, I'm telling you, coaches never call, and the first question, maybe every once in a while, but the first question is never, can this kid play? There's film on most of these kids, especially the kids that have the, if you're getting called about a player, they've seen them play. The questions they always ask right out the gate is, are they coachable? And what are their grades like? Because those speak volumes to your character as a young man, right? With regards to, we're talking primarily male basketball right now, right? So with girls basketball, same thing, right? It speaks to your character. If you have a 4.0 GPA, that tells me that you're a hard worker, that you're willing to take on challenges in the classroom, which probably tells me you're willing to do those same exact things on the basketball court. You know what I mean? If you're coachable, that means if you have flaws in your game, which most of them do at 17, 18 years old, if you're going to go play at the collegiate level, they need to know that they can correct some of those errors, you know what I'm saying, and right some of those wrongs in your game without feel like they're headbutting you every single time they have a conversation with you. Exactly. Because what players don't really realize, I don't think, and families of players too, is you're an investment. And if they're going to invest a scholarship in you, that's money. And they want a return on their investment. So if they just said, oh, this kid can hoop, he got crazy dunk packages, he's knocking down threes, and they just take you based on film, they, you know what I mean, without knowing the character of you, which again, grades and being coachable speak volumes to that. Mm-hmm. That's real easy to hit and miss on kids all the time. And there are programs that deal with that. You know what I mean? They go more on the potential or the athleticism and things like that. And then you end up with a kid that's like, man, this kid's a pain in the butt to work with. Exactly. Because you didn't ask those right questions. You know what I mean? And so, again, I think it requires just a better educational platform for players to really understand, you know, that it's extremely important for you to play high school basketball. It's also extremely important that you play club basketball, and just as equally important that you do individual showcase events. And most players in our area, or a lot of them don't like those individual camps and showcases because they don't like the brand of basketball. And I've told players, listen, I don't like it either. A lot of it's bad to watch. A bunch of up and down, chucking up threes. But what it does show a college coach or a scout is, okay, this kid is now in an environment where he's not with his teammates, he's not with his boys, because that's what's going to be like when you go to college. And now, how do you survive when you're out of your comfort zone? And so, like, there's these three necessary levels that kids have to be engaged in. And I think that's another key component, Ern, when we're talking about like what hurts our kids with regards to recruitment and that exposure piece is they're not doing all three of those categories, where a lot of these kids, these top kids, are doing all three all the time.
Yes.
So when our kids do go to a camp in LA or in NorCal, one of these bigger events, and there's 200 to 300 kids there, high school basketball players, and it's the first one they've ever done as a sophomore or junior in high school. And I mean, everybody knows that's been to these events. You could walk in, I could probably tell you 10 of the top 20 players before the event even starts. And that's the politics of it. You know what I'm saying? And players get salty about it. I'm like, look, I get it. It's not fair, but life is not fair.
Exactly.
You got to start doing these earlier. And so I think the other thing too is really getting players and families to understand that the investment it takes early on. If you're trying to get a scholarship, you're basically investing early on in order for that scholarship that'll pay off in the long run. You know what I mean?
I think what you were saying of the intangibles too. I'm not gonna say his name, but just a player of ours recently or back in the past. Players need to remember too. Social media gets you in so much trouble with your. If you're not happy at a program, please don't vent it on your social media, my guy. I know you're the best player on the court, which is great. You've always been that your whole life. But coaches, especially at that next level, aren't looking for the best player. They're looking for the best player for their system.
Yeah.
And if you can't be coachable, you can't take a little criticism, then here you are venting on social media. It's like, dude, you gotta stop. I think players too. Whoever you guys watch it, stop. You guys gotta stop that. That will take. I think that's an eyesore for sure, right? For the next level.
Well, yeah, and that's I think the other thing too. I'm glad you brought up social media. I think players have to understand. College coaches go through your social media accounts.
No way, dude.
They're looking through the accounts because again, that's another way they can learn who they're investing in. Is this kid worth the time? I've even told players, in pictures, they're not kids that are gangsters or anything, but they're throwing up little stuff here and there they seen in rap videos or whatever. I'm like, bro, it's not funny though, because you could literally, and it's not a joke. And I don't know if they try, like, if all players fully understand this, but it's like you could lose the attention of a college coach by something you've posted on social media.
You're like,
exactly. And that's an opportunity you missed.
Yes.
Like, so what I really like to talk to players about too sometimes is like, make sure like you have almost a separate account for basketball. You know what I'm saying? Like, use social media to promote you in a positive way. Have a basketball Instagram account. Get a Twitter account. You know what I mean? Like, the one thing a lot of the players I think are starting to get the hang of now is like, you need a Twitter account because there's a ton of coaches on Twitter. They're not really on Instagram like that. That's more family stuff, or they're on Facebook. You know what I mean? Like, but if you want to start tagging coaches and getting their attention, the business side of things is being done on Twitter. That's where a lot of the coaches are at. So, just having those right accounts, but also again, knowing how to use them. And I think, Ern, you hit it right on the head by saying like, it requires like a good group around you to help monitor, because we're talking about teenage boys, man. You know what I'm saying? Young men. At that age, I was making all kinds of mistakes. You know what I mean? So
same thing. Like, I know even as a man, I still make mistakes on my social media, but I don't got college guys looking at me. But I do now, working for Kern High. I got eyes on me. I can't really do what I when I was 25, 30 now. But no, it applies to every day. It applies to our players too. I think now I'm on, and as a teacher, now that I'm on campus, just, not a teacher, of course, but just working as a staff member, it's been real interesting to keep an eye on our guys now. I'm like, bro, do you see what you're doing? You're representing everybody in that gym though when you do dumb shit like that, which is, you want to, but, like I tell my guys, why would I call one of the college coaches we have that you want to say, hey, this kid wants to play at the next level, I like him, but look how you are off the court. I said, I can't trust you. It's a liability. It's your character. Your character really could show through social media, 100%.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's something I really hope, again, all these everybody who's watching, just be mindful of that. I think playing basketball sometimes can be the easy part of it, especially when it comes to the business of basketball. There is the intangibles, like just our guys I tell them all the time, like, dude, you're walking out with your head down, though. You're talking back to coaches. Like, that's how I know you're not really serious about your game. You can't take constructive criticism. How you gonna apply it to the workplace when your boss says, hey, I need you to do this a little bit better? You're a liability. It's kind of pointless to talk to you. You're talking to a wall.
Well, it's kind of like the gift and the curse of social media, right? And just media in general, exposure in general. It's like players now have way more opportunities to get seen just through social media, right? Than players have had 20, 30 years ago, right? Because of that. But at the same time, that exposure that can go real positive. Also, if things are negative on your social media, you have that many more opportunities for any slip up to be seen.
Exactly.
And that expose, so you have the upside of positive exposure, but then also the downside of the potential for negative exposure with media, social media specifically, right? And so it's almost impossible to say as a young man, teenager, like, hey, don't do this mistake. That's why it's like I really appreciate certain players whose parents manage their social media accounts. You know what I mean? And I know that's not cool. No players want, like, I don't want to know my parents manage, but it's like, you know what? Those players whose parents do manage their accounts, they're professional. You never see anything off topic. You never see anything posted of anything other than basketball or scholastic related report cards, GPAs posted, things like that. All things that if I'm a coach and I scroll through it, I'm like, dang, this kid's pretty, does this kid even have like a social life? You know what I mean? Like, to that point, not that, again, and it gives them more of a lens into who you are, and that could be really good or it could really harm a player as well. So just being not tech savvy, sorry, just being like conscious of the realities of what's going on with social media, and that coaches do invest the time into looking through those things. They're doing their homework. They got to do their due diligence to make sure that Scully money is going into the right people's hands, and they're not just losing money because of what a kid looks like on the court only.
Definitely. One last thing, Paul. I want to really, talk about this past summer. You were an outlet for so many kids. You and Clips Hoops. Rue was out there too. How important was it, the springtime and the summer having those showcases for our kids? Not, like you said, not just for the central section, Bakersfield, Kern County area, but you had so many kids coming from other areas. How important was it to kind of start that, and what did you learn from that this year? You want to continue doing on to the next couple of years?
Yeah, so I think the thing that was really fun about it was seeing kids coming from other areas, right? We had a kid from the Long Beach area come through a couple times. His name's DeMarco Johnson, 8th grader. He's one of the top 8th graders in California. Kids, I mean, he's not your average 8th grader, you know what I mean? And so kids from like that area and that age group, but then specifically with the central section, like being able to get kids from all over the central section, Fresno, Kingsburg. So one of the assistant coaches for Kingsburg High School, he was bringing a group of guys through. Amaris Furman, who's the guy who's running the West Coast Elite Central program. He's also the assistant coach at Allen Hancock Junior College. He was bringing guys over. He coached an AAU team over at the Central Coast before he jumped on with West Coast Elite. He was bringing guys over from the Central Coast, which was really great because it's like I never seen those kids. You know what I mean? Really, unless it's like the playoffs or something.
Yeah, definitely.
So what I really liked about it was a few things. One, it was just really nice to get kids in a relatively safe environment. We kept the workouts to like no more than 15 to 20 players. We were trying to be, it was weird because we were kind of this tightrope, you know what I mean? And Damo does a great job. Like him and I do a good job of always self-checking each other on things. Like, so we ran the events for a couple months, and then it was like the numbers were going up big time, the COVID numbers. And we're like, bro, this is an eyesore. If people see all this posted, these videos posted, it just doesn't come across as like we're being responsible. So we took some time off, and then numbers dipped. So we started some things back up, and then numbers went back up. So we've kind of really managed that part of it. And that's been fun to do. As far as you working with someone that kind of sees things the same way is nice, but also has their own spin on the basketball side of things. You know what I mean? But again, the opportunities that we saw out of it was that I would like to build on moving forward is we have a great opportunity to start doing maybe more of these events moving forward. So having more showcases for individual players, getting to the point at some time putting like team showcase events together. So the potential for having events in the central section, there are events already, but I think with the reach that we have between myself and between Clutch, Clutch has done a great job of building a networking relationship with a lot of the top videographers in the nation. You know what I mean? They're networking with Ball Dogs, they're networking with Beach City Hoops, they're networking with, all the big name people. And so they're involved in those communications through their text messages, which is great for both of us. You know what I mean? Because it gives us, we have other outlets that we can reach out to, and they're always like, yo, you guys need to do more in your area. And so I think what we got out of the prospect runs and the showcases was, one, we do have a lot of talent in this area, a lot of talent, and not just Division I talent. I think we have a ton of hidden Division II talent in the central section, and some high level NAIA guys. And I think if players really understood the benefits of a Division III school, right, a high academic school, they would, you could start to put the emphasis more on the grades. Bro, you could go play college ball and get a phenomenal education on top of it from like a, Caltech, and walk out of that institution with a degree that's going to land you a job where you're making six figures.
Easy.
You know what I mean? And you can do it like playing and basketball is the way you get there.
Exactly.
But they hear D3, so a lot of it too is in these events. We were able to put some video film together. I was able to do a lot of like evaluations and write-ups. I used the Silver Waves media platform to promote them there and post them there. Again, Silver Waves been great about, Ryan Silver and his crew have been great about promoting, allowing me to have that platform. And so that it really showed us there's the depth of talent. There's a need and a desire for players to want to get on that stage. The other thing that I think, and me and Dom have talked about a little bit, but that I really walked away going like, wow, this is why this could be beneficial, is it allows our top guys to compete against each other without competing against the big names from SoCal and NorCal. You know what I mean? So it kind of levels the playing field a little bit, because again, it's not that our kids, like our top kids, like a Joseph Hunter, right? Or an AJ George, or Seth Morantos over at BCHS. You know what I mean? Even my kid's not, top tier hooper in the nation, but the kid can ball, you know what I mean? And so even him going to some of these events, these larger events in SoCal, NorCal, Vegas, wherever the individual events are at, you're competing against not just the players, but the names of the players. And so having stuff here locally in the central section, it allows our top guys and even that next tier of guys to have the chance to stand out without competing against players' names. You know what I mean? Because that's what really hurts a lot of kids, players across the board, regardless of where they're from. If you don't walk into those events with an already known name, you're competing against the player and the player's name. And that's like competing against two things. And that other player is only competing against you as the player because their name is already established. And so I think what we've seen is there is a ton of potential to continue these types of things in the central section. But I think also keeping things tied to the bigger organizations outside of the central section, so that, again, that information is getting fed back and forth, so that when Cal High Sports does their rankings or does their player awards, or when Dinos from Pangos does his rankings, or when Prep Hoops do their rankings, or when, Jerry Friedis is putting stuff together, we have now the ability and the opportunity to have conversation with those guys on the phone, you know what I'm saying, or via text message, and that helps increase the exposure even more. And now when those kids do go to these events outside of our area, they're not just going there as like, well, fingers crossed, I hope it all goes my way. It's like, no, your name's been given to people that are going to be scouting the event. So just go out and hoop. Just do your thing and hoop. Don't worry about the politics. Don't worry about anything else. Just go play basketball. You know what I mean? So I think all those things combined, again, a realization that we have a lot more talent in this area than people realize. 2, there's a platform to put it on. 3, we can continue to keep doing this moving forward for this foreseeable future, with individual events and team events. And then 3, taking the top players from those events, working with some of these big event coordinators and saying, hey, these are the top 3 guys, at that event, or this is the top guy, he was the most outstanding player for this showcase, maybe he gets comp for free at this bigger event. You know what I mean? So using that way as a way to network, because it's not cheap. You know what I mean? That's the other thing a lot of our players struggle with is I'll send them information. Like, coach, do you know about a camp or a showcase? I send it to him like, dang, it's like $300. I'm like, bro, would you think it was free?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Investment. We're investing in ourselves.
exactly. So if we could start to get that platform to where if we can take the top 2 players from one of our events and work out something, you know, and get another 10 players to register, those top 2 players maybe get an event for free. You know what I mean? And those are conversations that we've been having with some of these bigger event coordinators. So just, again, more opportunities, man.
And I think that's exactly what we need here, especially in our county, bro. We need the eyes, and we have the talent. I think, especially in the next couple of years. I know it's kind of a down year, but I really respect what you're doing, man. I think it's going to be beneficial to kids all over the, especially for my side of town. We don't really have that exposure, especially the ones who are really ballers. Just didn't have the route, didn't know it existed, didn't know how to get to that destination and play at the next level, no matter what. If it's a D3, NAIA, whatever it is. They never been exposed to that, man. So it's real beautiful you're doing that, Paul. And I'm rooting for you, my guy. I'm keeping an eye on it. That's why I have you on too. I was really interested in what the service you're providing for this community.
Well, I appreciate it, bro. And it's been my pleasure too, because it's allowed me to kind of navigate through, you know how it is, man. There's some people get along, some don't, whatever it is. And I think that this part of it and getting away from the coaching and being more on this side of it is really opened my eyes to the benefits of, you know what, man, working with other people. You ain't got to be best friends with everybody.
Oh, bro, exactly.
At the end of the day, we're doing our kids a better service if we can all work together for the collective good of what our kids need is, again, a platform for basketball. We've got a great 5-court facility in Bakersfield. We have, you know what I'm saying? We have people, we have good trainers, we have some quality coaches. Like, we have the pieces that can make it all fit together to where there's quality. But again, it's at the end of the day, it's still Kern County. You know what I mean? It's still Fresno, California. It's still the Central Coast. And if I'm a scout, not from this area, it's going to take a lot for me to go watch you play.
Exactly.
Versus if I can just get that information from the people that are already covering it and they feel that information is credible, and we can go from there. But I've really enjoyed the networking. And I appreciate you, man. It's really awesome platform. Damo and I have been talking about possibly, jumping in and doing a podcast on our own about some stuff. But, I've been very fortunate in all of this too. I've not as a shameless plug, because I don't need to say this as a shameless plug, but I really try to get myself, really more involved with Christ in the last few years. Yeah. And, just try to get some things right. And I feel like the more I kind of just give that over, to him and just kind of let that guide it as well, I think it clears my mind on what's important and what's not. You know what I'm saying? And some of the things when I was a coach or when I was just kind of ignorant about stuff that I thought were important, I'm realizing now, like, that the stuff wasn't that important, man. And you may have burned some bridges in the process. So make sure if you burn in a bridge, like it's worth it. You know what I mean? And most of the time it's just not, you know what I mean? It's really not. And so it's that too, having the opportunity to work with people, having the opportunity to come on your podcast, and talk about my platform and talk about what I'm doing I'm extremely grateful for that, because, if you guys weren't doing what you're doing, or some of the other people I've been fortunate to be on podcasts weren't doing what they're doing, then it still becomes something that's just a name brand. And do people really buy into it? Is it worth, it still becomes kind of a mystery to some people. And, we don't want that. We got enough mysteries around what our players are dealing with anyways, with regards to exposure. We want to eliminate as much of the uncertainty as possible and know that people are going to get a legit assessment. And two, like I said, working with a guy like Damo, Clutch in general, but specifically Damo and I work a lot together.
Dude, he's so smart.
Yeah, man.
Bro. And that's not even, I would tell him that if he was sitting here with me. It's my guy, one of my best friends. Smart dude, bro.
He is, man. And we have some great conversations, on the road. And I think, well, the one thing I like about a lot of this too is, it's a lot of road travel and it can get tiring at times, but it also allows for those conversations where you can kind of work through a lot of the structure of what we're wanting to do. We can hash all that out on the road, you know what I mean? But then we have, other good talks, quality talks about just what's important. What are some things we could do to, yeah, we want to do this for the players and the kids and keep them as the focus. And so how do we keep that persona going? Because, in this thing, there becomes the battle of anything you're doing. You get some success. It's always, you gotta tame that with humbleness. You know what I'm saying? And so
100%.
for me, and I feel like Dom's the same way, like I'm really not trying to chase clout. You know what I'm saying? I don't want that to be the perception. And but it is constantly having to remind myself, like, remember why you're doing this. Remember what's important. You know what I'm saying? Remember that you're lucky to be doing this, because this is not a rocket science job. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people could cover basketball. So I'm fortunate to have these things, and I don't want to take them for granted. And I think that is a huge factor that keeps driving me to want to accomplish more, but also at the same time, constantly trying to check and make sure that it's not getting that point where you start to just feel yourself too much. You know what I mean? Because I think that takes away from the kids.
You want to do for the right reasons, for sure.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think that's something I come in. I'm constantly in battle with that too. I'm not perfect. Like I gotta really humble myself. Like what are we doing this for? Like what this even with the DJing podcast. I'm like, okay, remember that what you started at 2 years ago. You were talking to a mic. You were just talking to your imported microphone, on your laptop, my guy.
Mhm.
And just the blessings that came with. Now we have sponsors back in this, and
Yeah.
it's crazy, bro. Like I feel so fortunate, or just being at Highland, like, bro, anybody could be here, but
Yeah.
they chose you, So remember why you're here with these kids. And I think, like you said, man, you got to just let the universe and God take over and just
Mhm.
remember it keeps you humbled and just keeps you, I think being humble and hungry is a really deadly combination. It's going to lead to
It
just
is.
greater things, bro. I think we're especially seeing where you came from, Paul. I think 2 years ago, my guy, you were just at Garza's watching, just like I said, you were just watching the players. Now you started doing your scouting, doing your rankings. Like I was there, I seen the beginning of that, and to see
Yeah.
where you're at now, man, it's awesome, bro. I really I love seeing. That's what I was telling Domo. Domo's always co-signed you from the beginning too, my guy, 100%. I'm sure you know that, but just the FYI, Domo's
Yeah.
been man stamp of approval since the beginning, bro.
Yeah, no, that's he's been someone in this thing. Like, again, there's a lot of people I've been very fortunate to network with, but in our area specifically, it's just been nice to have someone who has a very similar vision about what we're trying to accomplish. You know what I'm saying? But the nice thing is we complement what we're doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not trying to do the scouting and the write-ups. I'm not trying to hold the camera and do the video stuff. You know what I mean? So it's funny because we could if one of us chose the what the other one's doing, we would actually probably be more competitors. You know what I'm saying? But because we didn't, and we are kind of in this, we kind of jump started a lot of it at the same time. You know what I'm saying? They started Clutch when Foothill was on their run. That was my first year coaching at Ridgeview. I was posting stuff left right because Ridge was going to a bunch of tournaments, because that was right after they were coming off their, a year removed from their Valley Championship. So they had a lot of clout in the section. So we were at the Clovis Nike Invitational. Foothill was there that year as well too. You know what I mean? So that kind of started it all. And to see again how things have been able to kind of merge since then is it's rewarding. It's also but it's like you said, that kind of hungry element to it is like, but there's so much more that we could do for the positive. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not that you don't need to be aware and pleased with your accomplishments, but it's one of those things where it's like, you don't want to be comfortable and settle with that either. You know what I mean? When there's more that can be done.
Yeah, I think being comfortable and content is disease. There's more,
Yep.
always more. There's always something we can learn from, dude. I learn from every pod. That's why I try to make every pod the next best one. So
Yeah.
it's awesome, bro. I'm rooting for you, Paul. I
I
really
appreciate you,
coming
bro.
on,
Same
man.
here to you, man. Same here to you.
Episode
Love
85.
what you got going on.
You're gonna make it a great one, bro. I really appreciate you coming on. For all the players out there, all the players who want to, hit you up or just get your rankings and get your scouting, where can they find you at, Paul?
The easiest way would be to go to so either Instagram, which would be 661 underscore hoops underscore live. And then or for Twitter would be just at P double underscore 33. But if you type in Twitter 661 hoops live, it'll pop up. You know what I mean? Those would be the two areas to like, if they had questions or wanted to contact or this what we've been looking at this season. And I've been telling players, listen, if you have a good game, we can't be at every game. You know what I'm saying? So shoot me your stats. I need official stat sheets, but send me a picture of an official stat sheet. We'll post your stuff so that you're getting that run. You know what I mean? So those would be the two best ones. And then from there, I could always direct them as far as write-ups and evaluations go. All my stuff is published on Silver Waves Media. So if they just go to that, you click on the boys basketball link. And I think my most recent articles is still the top one on there right now. I don't think they've published anything this last week. But most of all of our write-ups we did on the Central Cali prospect scouts and basically everything I've done the last year, I've been putting through there. So that it's all on the Silver Waves Media.
Beautiful, bro. We'll plug that in for sure, man. And that's going to be episode 85 of the STS Podcast. I got Paul Hernandez, 661 Hoops Live. My guy, appreciate you coming on, man. Blessing the pod.
Appreciate you for having me, Ern. Definitely, man. You have a great evening, my guy.
You too, my guy. Here we go, y'all. Appreciate it.
All right, brother. Take care.